Hello, I'm Dr. Kate Drabinski, and I will be your instructor for this winter session course, Gender and Women's Studies 345 Unruly Bodies. I'm really sorry I can't be with you for our first in-class meeting, but I wanted to say hi and put a face to the name and just give you a few things to think about as we start this winter semester. So this, if we were in person, I would ask the class, how many of you have taken a Gender and Women's Studies course before? And a lot of you have, as I can tell from looking at your records, but some of you haven't. And so I wanted to welcome you and say it's really fine to be starting from scratch. This course is different from a lot of our classes because its focus isn't really gender and sexuality per se, but more this thing that we call the body, and sort of what are some different ways that theorists across a variety of disciplines have thought about the problem of embodiment. What's the connection between the mind and the body? What do we do about the fact that bodies are both the site of politics, where politics are worked out on our bodies, and also a place where a lot of us sort of do new things to challenge expectations and norms. So this class is really about thinking about this thing that's like a meat sack, right? This body, this sort of flesh, and the way that it has a political, social, and historical life. So if that doesn't make a lot of sense, don't worry, it will as we continue with the course. So I wanted to give you a few tips for working through the class material. So if you've taken a hybrid class before, you're familiar with the sort of rhythm of things. We'll meet in person on Mondays and Wednesdays, and then you'll complete work for the course online for the other 2 days of the week. These are asynchronous classes, which means we don't meet in person together at a particular time, so you can complete the work at your own pace as long as it sort of meets the deadline. So if you look at the syllabus and the deadlines for things like discussion boards, you'll see that a discussion board is due by 11:59 p.m. on the days before we meet in person. We'll spend the first part of our in-person class meetings going over what you learned from your readings and writings on the discussion board, and then we'll spend the rest of the class on new material. So make sure that you've read the material before class on the day that is listed on the syllabus. So let's talk about the discussion boards for a second. So the discussion boards are really, really important. Each one is worth 5 points or 5% of your course grade. But more importantly, that's the place where you get to try out and write through some new ideas. So they're really, really important. The key to getting full credit on the discussion boards is to make sure that you work closely with the texts assigned when you're answering the questions. So by this, I mean use actual quotations from the text to support the claims that you make in your discussion board. So every answer needs to have quotations. And the reason for this is because I want to see how you work through the text. A lot of them will be very challenging, will include vocabulary and concepts that are new, and I want to see sort of what you've understood from what you've read. I don't think that I did anything beyond reading comprehension until my 4th year of graduate school. So I think it's really important to sort of dig into these readings, and that's what the discussion board gives you a chance to do. Writing isn't just a translation of things from our head onto a page, but writing is itself how we come to know things. So the writing on the discussion board is a chance for you to see what you really understand from what you've learned. So please be sure to take the time and write those with some seriousness. The discussion board posts should be between 250 to 500 words, about that, so a page or two if they were double spaced in Word or something. I'm not grading on how long it is. I'm not grading on whether or not it's correct or right. I'm just assessing it based on how much you've engaged with the text. If something's confusing to you or you're struggling with concepts, the discussion board is also a good place to note that. So if you want to jot down while you're reading concepts or words that are unfamiliar to you and put those in the discussion board, I can make sure that that we spend some class time working through those concepts. So that's the discussion board part of the class. The other major part of the class is the course blog. Now, You'll soon get an invitation in your email to sign up to join the class blog. You'll see that it's already full of entries. That's because I've used this blog for multiple courses. Multiple times I've taught this course, and the idea is to build an ongoing archive of how UMBC students think about problems of embodiment. The good news for you is you've got a sense, if you look at the blog, you can get a sense of the kinds of things that people write about, and this can help sort of spark your curiosity and interest and sense of what a good blog post is. So we'll talk more about this when we meet in person next week. But when you get the invitation, I want you to accept it and to start a WordPress account if you don't already have one. And when you're doing that, I want to recommend that you choose a username that's not connected to your actual identity. Once the class is over, I will delete all users from the blog and no one will be able to find it. But if you've got a username that's like your name, it's possible somewhere in the future that someone might be able to find it and connect your writing to you. Now, so far on the discussion board, everyone seems to agree so far that personal privacy, online privacy, is not a huge issue. I tend to agree, but I also think that there's no way to know what 10 years from now you would want future employers to know that you thought about or wrote about. So when you look at the blog, you'll see that a lot of people write very personal stories. They connect class material with things happening in their own lives, their own experiences of illness, of addiction, of things, sort of embodied experiences, and that's absolutely fine. All of us have bodies, and a lot of the material we'll be talking about in class will be we'll be able to relate to it, right? Stuff about how gender and sex are written on our bodies, how disability, illness, death, life, how these things sort of manifest in our bodies, and writing about your own experiences is absolutely welcome in this class, though it is entirely not required. But if you do write about your own experiences, I want you to have some layer of privacy and protection. So please choose a username that is not easily connected to you. So we'll talk more about sort of some of the expectations of your blog posts when we meet. But we'll also in this class be talking about how to create a readership. How do we get people to read our blog? And this is partly because what I want us to do this winter session is to start learning how to develop our own writing voice and how to find people to listen to us. So much of sort of political work is now done in the sort of online writing space, and so I think it's a good chance for us to get better at it. So that's the course blog, and those are the two major parts of the class. We'll talk more about the final reflection much later in winter session. Your readings for this course, the first group of readings are all from the body reader, so make sure that you get a hold of that ASAP. Your first discussion board is due next Sunday, on Sunday before we meet again as a class, and you'll need to read the introduction to that book in order to answer those questions. So be sure that you've got a hold of that book. Let's see, what else will I tell you about that? So as you get started with your reading, the introductory chapter to the body reader, your first assigned reading, is very challenging, I think, for a lot of people who are new to this field of study. It's going to go through a bunch of interdisciplinary ways that scholars and theorists have thought about the body. So you'll read from philosophy, history, gender and women's studies, critical race theory, a lot of different ways and different fields, places where people have talked about embodiment. So don't get frustrated if things seem challenging. We will work through these ideas in class. The sort of we're going to start our class by talking about this problem of Cartesian dualism. Is there a split between the body and the self? Is the body just a flesh sack, meat sack that's carrying our brains around? Is it the gateway to knowledge for the brain? Are they separate? Can we think of them together? So these are some of the questions that are going to come up in the introduction to the body reader, and I hope that you enjoy it. The rest of the course will unfold with different kinds of case studies of bodies and embodiment. So thinking about pregnancy, illness, death, How do you know when someone's alive or dead? What if someone's breathing, but their brain shows no activity? How does science think about these liminal spaces, that space between life and death, the space between masculinity and femininity, the space between the ability and disability, right? These sort of liminal spaces. So I hope we're going to have a really fun winter session going through a lot of different kinds of material, and I'm really excited to have you join me. So look for your email to join the class blog, and I will then email me with any questions or concerns you have, and I will see you next week. Happy New Year!